We need you a chair. You can stand if you want to stand.
Next week I won't be able to.
Well, sit down, everybody. I'm going to sit. Well, I'm sure everyone knows by now, but and I'm sure you know why you're here, but there has been incredible things happen again to West Virginia. You know, we're truly on our way, and we're doing what I truly believe is the right thing, and it's the right thing for our citizens, and it gives us hope, it gives us jobs, it gives us real life. You know, not to belabor this in any way, but when I rolled in here, it was a pretty dismal situation, to say the least. And when you inherited a $500 million deficit, it wasn't any fun. And there was really nowhere to turn. And you know, at the same time, if you'll just be fair and just think, we had drained rainy day. We couldn't go back to rainy day. The coal business was dismal, to say the very least. What are you going to do? Where are you going to turn? And through, in my world at least, the blessings of the good Lord in every way, we went to work. We had an idea on building roads and creating instant jobs and bringing tourism and everything else to our state. Along the way, we had hired secretaries to head up our cabinet positions. I didn't ask ever, and still don't know to this day, you know, whether they be Republicans or Democrats or independents. I hired what I thought was the very best people. I've spoken many times about a superstar in Tom Smith, but we've got other superstars, and right there's one of them, Woody Thrasher. And what a job he's done. What an incredible job the Commerce Department is doing. Think about Chelsea Ruby and what she's doing today in tourism. Think about the difficulties that Bill Crouch is facing, or Austin Caperton, or what they're doing. They're doing greatness, and on and on and on. You know, so with that being said, what did we do? We changed the footprint of education, did we not? We got rid of a lot of the crazy stuff that we were doing that just holds us back all over the place. And then, lo and behold, we passed a road bond referendum by 73% of the vote. With labor on our side, with business on our side, and now we're off and going. And all the way, we kept working, whether it be Toyota or Hino Motors, or it be a great barrel factory. You know, all the time we kept working through this man and through commerce and all the stuff we do. In addition to that, we had a terrible fire in Wood County, did we not? And they didn't know what to do. Somebody had to make a decision. They didn't know what to do. The contractor that was shooting water on the fire, the county didn't have any money, and the county was on the verge of going bankrupt. Somebody had to make a decision. And I did. I made the decision that the state would back them up and bridge them until we got the insurance money, and we're hopeful that we're going to collect back every single dime that the state had to spend. But the alternative was just as simple as mud. You don't know what was going into the air. The place was burning. And for crying out loud, we had children and people of Parkersburg and everybody else around that could have been endangered or were endangered. We had to make a decision. We didn't just throw our hands up and say, well, there's nothing we can do. You know, it goes back to my dad. I can remember standing in front of my dad and saying, there's nothing I could do. There's nothing I can do, Dad. And all of a sudden, the whole desk explodes as he grabs me around my shirt and slams me down on the desk and says, damn you, there's always something you can do, and you better damn well always remember that. Well, nevertheless, we act, and we do. And we try to do it together. We don't put labor over here and business over here and say we don't like one another, we're not going to work together. We work together, and we move. And this state is truly, truly moving. Now, I'm going to let our great secretary explain just a little bit, and then he's going to come back to me, and then I'm going to flip it back to him. But Secretary Thrasher, I congratulate you. I congratulate all this wonderful work that you and your team's done, and what an incredible day it is for West Virginia.
Well, thank you, Governor, and recognize that we appreciate you. None of this would have happened without our governor. I think it's worth sort of telling the story. I think it's an interesting story. When I took this job, the governor was very clear in his direction to me that my job was to go out and find jobs for West Virginians. And he didn't tell me where to do it, but he told me to go look everywhere I could find to do that. And so about March, we had a discussion and said, look, there's an opportunity to go to China and Japan. We already have strong relationships with Japanese employers. I think it reinforces those. But it also allows us to go to China and develop new relationships and see opportunities. So in March, I spent a couple of weeks, a week in China and a week in Japan, and came back and reported to our governor that there were a lot of things that really, I think, were potential relative to China, and of course, strengthened our ties with Japan. About a month ago, we had a visit from a delegation from a group that I had met with and had a series of meetings with, Shenhua Corporation. In fact, a Chinese, the largest energy company in the world, state-owned company in China, who has, interestingly enough, had a 10-year relationship with West Virginia University, Brian Anderson, and so there was a long-standing relationship between that company and the state of West Virginia. But about a month ago, a group representing Shenhua came and basically said this: we want to respond to President Trump's challenge that we need to balance out this trade imbalance we have with China. And President Trump has been very clear with us, this imbalance needs to end. At your last visit, we discussed all the petrochemical opportunities in your state. And we have interest in outlining up to $80 billion in projects within the petrochemical industry. So I said, that's terrific. And we will put together a list of projects that we think can satisfy that. So I sat down with the governor, and we went over that whole series of proposed projects and the unbelievable dollar value that would be achieved with those projects. And he sent me off to China to do what I could to shore up that deal, and that's exactly what I did. And at that point, I met in detail with the president of Shenhua, Dr. Ling, and we further strengthened what is already a good relationship that exists. And we specifically identified those projects that we were going to go forward with. The very next week, there was a delegation of 9 Chinese representing Shenhua that came to view this wide variety of projects, and they got into the weeds. They visited sites, they understood the nature of our petrochemical industry, and we specifically identified many possibilities for these projects. And it became critical that we come to consensus before President Trump visited China. Their goal was to announce these projects when President Trump visited China. Well, about 2/3 of the way into that week, we felt like this opportunity was slipping away. There was a Bloomberg News article that talked about projects going forward in Texas, Virgin Islands, and other states, and West Virginia was not mentioned. And I sent that to the governor, and the governor made it abundantly clear to me that these projects cannot slip away. He not only made it abundantly clear to me, he made it abundantly clear to the Department of Commerce and Department of Energy that these projects could not slip away. And I can tell you, I asked the Chinese delegation to stay for 2 more days, and we would have these issues resolved. Thanks to the governor picking up the phone and communicating with folks at Department of Energy and Department of Commerce, West Virginia's position on those projects was again elevated to the very top of that list. So thank you, Governor, for becoming intimately involved with these negotiations that ultimately resulted in us being able to return to China and sign the Memorandum of Understanding, which has been well documented in everyone's favor. But I would suggest to you that we all need to say thank you to our governor for becoming intimately involved with the details and to be making sure that West Virginia was not left behind. Forevermore, we have talked about one more point, and then I'll quit talking. Forevermore, we have made the point that we have all these wonderful natural raw resources that get shipped out to somewhere else where value is added. The governor was adamant that this is not going to happen this time and did everything necessary to see to it that it didn't. So thank you, Governor. Without you, I genuinely mean that this never would have happened.
Well, listen, let me just tell you this. A minute when I said he's a superstar, and a minute when I said Tom Smith's a superstar. At the end of the day, I meant it when I said it doesn't really matter if you're a Republican or Democrat or independent. At the end of the day, it's high time that we all just grab the rope together as West Virginians and run across the finish line. None of us can do this by ourselves. None of us can. Now let me tell you, I'm really proud of this. I'm really proud of the relationship that I have and the participation from our president. Now whether you like him or don't like him, he is our president, for crying out loud. And you know, he really can help West Virginia, and he's doing it right now, right in front of us. And when it got to crunch time, we did almost lose this. We did. We almost lost again, maybe to Texas, or even, of all things, the Virgin Islands, or whomever it may be. They left. They left. And when I heard they left, you know, we went crazy and we scrambled. And you know, the long and the short of it is, we put together a meeting with our Commerce Department and this great man right here, and the Chinese in Washington, and had them fly back. They were in Texas. Bloomberg announced what would happen in Texas. And they flew back, and they flew to D.C. And at that time, Wilbur Ross, the Department of Energy, and many people met with these people, and lo and behold, look what we have. For once, West Virginia's not standing there holding the bag with nothing in it. And we got a real opportunity. And let me just say this. Just imagine this just for a second. Who in the world can even begin to describe what $83.7 billion of money investments is? Well, I'll tell you what it is. Do you realize it's $83,700 million investments? Now just think about that. $83,700 million investments. For crying out loud, it absolutely takes your breath. I mean, I don't know if you could actually pull this off, but you may be able to rebuild every city in the state of West Virginia with $83.7 billion. It is not even comprehensible, the magnitude of the size of what is right at our doorstep now. Now let me tell you this. There's always got to be somebody that's a naysayer that's out there in the wilderness that's, you know, going to throw a rock at this or that and whatever. Now, listen to me. A long time ago, my grandfather that I loved very dearly, he was 88 years old, and he wanted to go squirrel hunting. And so we had a farm over in Monroe County, and there surely wasn't an interstate to, you know, guide us there and all that kind of stuff. And we didn't have anything to stay in Lewisburg, but he got him a room at the Fort Savannah Inn in Lewisburg. And I lived in Beckley. And I would drive and pick him up, and we would go squirrel hunting. And we'd hunt till black dark and everything. And then on the way back, we were hungry. And so on the way back, I stopped at Kroger's, and we went in and I bought him 2 bags of food. I bought everything. Anything he could possibly want to eat as far as a sandwich or stuff for breakfast, sweet rolls, orange juice, and all that kind of stuff. And I put it in the back seat where he was in the back seat, and there was another fellow with me up front seat and everything. He was in the back seat and he started going through the bags. And I had everything. 2 grocery bags full of just stuff. And he looked right at me and he said, "Could you not have brought a damn man a banana?" Well, that's exactly what I would say to you. If you can find something wrong with this, you're looking for a banana. That's all there is to it. Now, there wasn't a banana in the bag. I can't put a banana in the bag if you're looking for a banana. But now let me address 2 things real quick. And then I'm going to turn it to the experts. And that is just this. There's concern from the standpoint of coal. Is this going to materially, or could this hurt our coal industry? And I would tell you just as straight up as I can possibly tell you, that's not going to happen on my watch. There's no way. There's no way. We're going to protect our miners in every way, shape, form, or fashion, and we're going to expand our coal industry. That's what we want to do. Now, way back when, I told you that the coal industry was going to get better, and everybody looked at me like I was from the planet Mongo. And lo and behold, it has. But we sure don't need to harpoon it and hurt our coal industry. I am teetotally on record as saying no way. No possible way. Now, there's other things that are good. The Chinese have incredible technology to turn coal to chemicals. And they can do that supposedly at about a $40 a ton cost. That's a real opportunity for us in West Virginia. The other thing that's going to happen is we are going to have manufacturing that is going to greatly increase the demand for electricity, of which we think will absolutely spawn its way back into more benefits to coal. The other thing that people brought up, is this a national security issue from the standpoint that there's going to be an extraction of our resources from our nation? And it is just dead the opposite. It is dead the opposite this way. The resources of the natural gas, the energy, are going to be made into something here. They're going to be made into products that China can buy. Now, it's almost just the opposite from shipping the energy out and becoming a third world country. Now, it's using our energy here to make something, and we got a real live market for it. Last thing I'd say is, going back to the experts, is just this. Donald Trump is dead level committed to our coal miners too. There's no way on earth that he's going to let our coal miners get hurt either. So you got 2 big guys that are saying no way. And so put those bananas to rest. And please quit worrying about those bananas today. The first thing we're going to try to do in every way, shape, form, or fashion is create manufacturing. Now, I think I'm done. I'll turn it back over. I'll pass the ball back to this young man.
I'd like to ask Brian Anderson to come join me at the podium.
Come on, Brian.
Brian runs the Energy Institute at West Virginia University, as I said before. They have a long relationship with Shenhua Energy. It goes back over 10 years in terms of doing research. I'm an engineer who got a C in chemistry, so it's really nice to have Brian Anderson here to sort of clean up when I don't sort of understand the processes. But allow me to give you a little bit of an overview why this is such an absolutely wonderful thing, I think, for the world. For years, we have argued about what a mistake it is for our United States companies to go to China, to invest in China, to build factories there, to utilize our technology there, and then to buy those finished products back. And it resulted in a substantial trade imbalance. Recognize this is the exact opposite of that. This is what everybody hoped would happen, is there would be a reversal of that process, and that's exactly what this is. These are Chinese dollars invested through Shenhua Corporation to build bricks and mortar facilities within West Virginia that will utilize our raw resources, convert those raw resources into value-added finished products that in turn are purchased back for use in China and other developing countries. If you were going to write a script, you could not write a more favorable script than what this is playing out to be. So as the governor says, you can look for the banana, but if you take what's absolutely very simple but very clear, this is the best thing that could possibly happen. Brian, let me turn it over to you a little bit to sort of talk about maybe some of the contemplated activities that will take place and why they make sense.
Sure. Well, thanks, Governor, and thanks, Secretary Thrasher. I don't know how much more there is to add. The opportunity that's right at our fingertips, as the Governor stated, certainly starts with manufacturing. It's about taking that raw material that we have, that we're producing from the prolific Marcellus and Utica shales, and once you strip out the energy portion of it that makes up natural gas, you're left with natural gas liquids, which are the building blocks to the entire manufacturing sector in polymers and plastics. And what we have in West Virginia is an opportunity at our fingertips that is once in a lifetime, where those natural gas liquids that we have in our region are the lowest cost raw materials on the face of the planet for the entire manufacturing sector. And so what this opportunity presented in front of us is taking those raw materials and adding value and manufacturing goods that consumers use every day, whether it's diapers or plastic bottles or toys, or the automotive components that are currently being built into our automotive sector to lightweight our vehicles. And so we are right now in West Virginia at the forefront of being able to manufacture those products and insert ourselves in the value chain for the entire manufacturing sector here in the United States. And so that's what the focus of this investment is about taking our raw materials and adding value. Because as my good friend Pat Getty, the president of the Claude Worthington Benedum Foundation, says, is that wealth is created where value is added. And so that's what we're focused on here, is creating wealth in the state of West Virginia by adding value to our natural resources. And briefly, in the history of Shenhua, the Shenhua Group, now China Energy, as you see in all the announcements due to a merger, this is a company that has historically focused on adding value across the value chain, and they've done this in China from coal. They operate the world's largest coal to liquids plant, as the governor mentioned. They own these technologies earlier. And so a partnership between the state of West Virginia and China Energy, or its successor, the Shenhua Group, is certainly about the entire value chain. And this is a company that has the technology that is world-class, and they are the world leaders in making valuable products, not just electrons from coal. And so it truly is an exciting day, and I can add any more detail you would like, Secretary or Governor. So thank you.
I think, you were kind enough to come. If you've got any questions, we'll try as best we can to answer them. Yes, sir.
What did Texas have that we didn't have, and how did we get it back?
What did Texas have that we didn't have?
Yeah, and how did we get them back?
Infrastructure.
Well, first of all, we did have two major things, and that is this, is not that President Trump doesn't love Texas, because I'm sure he loves Texas, but we are close friends. And so we did have a trump card right there, and he truly wants to do something to try to help West Virginia. And the first words out of my mouth were, are you absolutely kidding me that you're going to let, per Bloomberg, now I'm not talking to the president, I'm talking to the Energy Department, do you realize that we got left out of this process? And they said, hold on, that's not right. That's not right at all. And all of a sudden, wheels started moving. Now, then there was multitudes of calls. The second biggest thing that we have is just this, is we have the gas. We have the cheapest gas on the planet. Now, they wanted to come here and everything. You know, at the end of the day, guys, if they didn't want to come here, no matter what I do, no matter what the president does, no matter what Woody Thrasher does, no matter what Brian does, no matter what any of us do, they're not going to be here. We had the gold, we had the jewel of the Nile, and we had the relationship with President Trump. The reason, one of the giant reasons that they ended up here was the relationship. Because really at the end of the day, they want a real relationship with the U.S. And our relationship with China had become stretched. We've got a real live issue in North Korea, do we not, as a nation? And that relationship was stretched. This is a way for China to give back and to balance the trade imbalance. This is what, and in doing so, a natural target of that is a place that abounds in natural gas and a place where their governor has a real relationship with the president. That's all there is to it. Sir.
As of Friday, a week ago, we did not have, our name was not on the list of those projects that were contemplated to be signed at President Trump's visit. When I recognized that, I immediately reached out to the governor. He immediately called me back. 3 days later, we were scheduled to sit down with Commerce and Energy. When we sat down with Commerce, they were totally clear, and that Secretary Ross would be over the moon with excitement over the fact about these West Virginia projects, and we went from not being on the list to the top of the list, and that's because our governor became involved in that process.
One other thing that I'm sure Woody needs to share with y'all is just this, and this is neat. I mean, it's neat from the standpoint of just this. I mean, I've said it 1,000 times. Now, you may not print this, or you may decide just to go off and think of something else. That's your prerogative. But you won't take this away from me. And it's just this. Remember the guy at the Greenbrier Classic that came up to me and grabbed my hands and said his name was Bob something or other, I can't recall his name. With tears running down his face, he said, "I'm 87 years old. And thank you for making me feel better about being a West Virginian." Now, I wasn't running for governor. All I was doing was being on CBS and saying just how great this state really is. Now, for this, you won't be able to take this away from me. And Woody will share a picture with you that when he got up to go sign the MOU, the president was sitting there and had just never taken the look off of his face of a scowl, you know, just mad almost and everything. But when he got up and they announced West Virginia, he looked at Woody with a smile on his face and gave Woody the thumbs up. Now, and Woody did the same thing.
All right, I got to correct a little bit of that. We were the first project announced. We were far and away the biggest project. We're a third of the total $250 billion announced. We were fully 1/3 of that. Right. And so we were the first people called up. And the president had a scowl on his face, which he'd had the whole time. And when he heard West Virginia, it was a smile. And I was just as close to the president as we are. And I said, "The governor sends his regards." And with that, Donald Trump gave a big thumbs up, which I responded with a big thumbs up to him. But clearly there's a relationship there. Clearly West Virginia benefits from that relationship, not only now, but well into the future. And I will share that picture with you later.
And let me just say this. I left off that Woody said, you know, the governor sends his regards. You know, but just what I'm telling you, you can't take away from me is this. Here we have West Virginia in front of the President of the United States, a place where we've been accepting being beat down. We've been last and not even thought of. West Virginia is in the front of the President of the United States and in the world scene in front of China's president and the President of the United States, and West Virginia is giving the thumbs up. And that you won't take away from me. That's why I ran. That's why Bob was holding my hands. Now, whether you choose to print that or whatever, to me, that's everything. Because I know how great we really are. And that's all I want, is just greatness for how great we really are. Please ask something else. Yes, sir.
I think you described laying out a list of projects that would make up $89 billion over 20 years. Are you at liberty to say more about what those are, or describe them, or the likelihood, or the timeline?
I don't want to get into the specifics of the projects, and Brian, you can maybe address this a bit, but they do encompass the whole chain of processes that are involved in providing value-added petrochemical products. And there's a whole wide series of projects. Can I guarantee you that they're going to spend $83 billion in 20 years? No. But what I can guarantee you is this, is the governor has directed me to do everything within my power to facilitate these projects going forward. And so we're partnering with Shenhua, as we are all our energy partners, to try to bring this all to fruition. It is absolutely a total game changer for the state of West Virginia beyond any of our wildest expectations. So I would also say, as the governor says, even if there's not a banana there, recognize just the significance of the interest that they have in this whole chain. It's also important to recognize they don't enjoy shale gases like we do. They have an abundance of coal. So having these very competitively priced, the cheapest petrochemicals in the world located here, and them being the ultimate demand for those supplies, there's a fundamental business case why this makes sense, both from their perspective and our perspective. So it gives one reassurance when you look at the underlying sorts of motivators. You want to discuss that chain of?
Well, certainly, when the value chain of the petrochemical industry from the natural gas liquids would start with the necessary fundamental framework infrastructure that would support that petrochemical sector. And so one thing that Texas does have that West Virginia doesn't is a storage and trading hub for these natural gas liquids that creates a spot market for the efficient trading and pricing of those natural gas liquids. And so one component of the investment can potentially be in the Appalachia Storage and Trading Hub that would create that value chain, the front end of the infrastructure. Other components are down the value chains of ethylene and propylene. Those include polyethylene, polyethylene manufacturing. That includes polyethylene terephthalate, which is what we make our clear plastic Coca-Cola bottles out of, and that's not a plug for Coke. But it's that value chain into polyethylene. That polyethylene chain also ends up in carpets, textiles, woven fabrics, and the other plastics that I mentioned before. In the polypropylene space, that's also a whole derivative line of polypropylenes as well that includes propylene glycol, as well as on the ethylene side, ethylene glycol and ethylene oxide. So these are the value chains that the investments will focus on, all from the downstream manufacturing sector. As far as the individual specific projects, as Secretary Thrasher mentioned, each project will begin, and actually many of them have already begun, the evaluation of each individual project's technical and economic viability for moving forward. But I will tell you, I know based on the prices of ethylene in our region, The fact that Shell, Royal Dutch Shell, a company we all are familiar with, has moved forward on a cracker facility in Pennsylvania is an indicator to the world that the value is there to take ethane and convert it into that polyethylene chain. And so those are the types of projects that we are working on under the portfolio that would move forward. Is that?
Yeah, no, that's very good explanation. I just want to add one thing. There's not only a strong underlying business case, but there's a strong underlying scientific basis for these projects going forward. Took a talented group with me, Chris Hopkins and Josh Jarrell from my office, Dr. Soon from Brian Anderson's office, and Steve Hedrick of Matrix Corporation, who deals with these types of facilities every day. Steve very much connected with the lead from Shenhua on these projects. And they had hours and days and days and days of methodically going over those fundamental projects, making sure that they made sense from what I'm going to say a scientific perspective. And I really have to give Steve a significant shout out. It made an enormous difference in terms of us coming across, really being credible, really knowing about that industry. And isn't this a beautiful thing? Matrix is Union Carbide think tank that's been recreated under new relationship. It's in our DNA, these petrochemical industries. It's what we did. And now there's an opportunity for that to come back in spades. So thank you, Steve.
Let me say one thing real quick about what Brian was saying. I want Brian to do this because I bet there's a bunch of y'all that don't have any clue what a natural gas storage hub is, because, and I think Brian ought to explain that to you without going too detailed. And the other thing that we're going to do, because Brian said that the plastic from the byproduct that's coming off the natural gas could very well be in the bottles of, what you drink every day in Coke. And so one thing that I think we ought to do is make a recommendation to Coke that they change the bottle design to where it's only a W and a V. And so we'll drink from the top of the W and the side of the V and everything. But go ahead, Brian.
Governor, I think it's a great idea. The storage hub, the concept of the storage hub is really to create a warehouse for those natural gas liquids. That is the storage container. And these are subsurface storage units. Like in the Gulf of Mexico, they are in a salt dome that you create basically a cavern that would look like this room that you pressurize with the natural gas liquid. So you fill the ethane into a storage cavern that's mined in the subsurface using mining techniques that we certainly know how to do in the state of West Virginia. And so when you store that liquid in the subsurface, it's so that when you trade, you have a warehouse, the storehouse for those natural gas liquids. But the major key component of the storage hub, beyond the warehouse to store each of the component natural gas liquids, is the infrastructure of pipelines that will connect the manufacturing sites in West Virginia with the appropriate feedstock and raw material. And it's that infrastructure of efficiently taking the raw material from the storage units to manufacturing facilities and connecting manufacturing facilities with pipelines that really creates the efficient industry that petrochemical industry is looking for. And so the storage is basically just mined caverns connected by pipes to the infrastructure, the surface locations that we would build manufacturing facilities across the state.
And the pipelines, hopefully, wouldn't be pipelines that would be stretching all over God's green acres. They would be pipelines to the manufacturing process.
Yes, right. Yes.
So they may be very close. So, I mean, all I was trying to do is just short out the next question. Are we going to build pipelines going all over God's green acres and everything?
No.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Governor. Secretary Thrasher indicated he did not want to get into the specifics. Would you personally agree now to release this list that you all have of all of these projects? And will you also commit to releasing the MOU?
I was going to say one other thing. I am the guy that wants to be so transparent, it's unbelievable, provided that the Chinese are, that we're not breaching any level of confidentialities, okay? I'm the guy that wants you to know everything and anything at all times. But let me just say one other thing too. I'm a smart guy too, and I would say to you that today we should feel like we are so far down the road it is unbelievable versus where we were yesterday. But at the same time, we've got to continue to be smart that, we haven't seen the first shovels in the ground and everything. But, and I'm kind of a show me guy. I'm that kind of guy. Now, but at the same time, just think what you've got going for you here. You got the gas, you got a Commerce Department, you got President Trump that's wanting things to happen in West Virginia, you got a governor that's all in. You got lots and lots and lots of components that make this become a reality. But we want to, we're not shovels in the ground yet, but we're moving. We're moving. You talk about something that is truly what our secretary said, a game changer. Huh, are you kidding me? And the other thing is, you can rest assured from your governor's standpoint that we are way down the trail, or I wouldn't be out here in front of you. Now, if a secretary could answer your question more pertinently, I'll let him.
Well, I would just say, we've agreed with Shenhua that at this point in time is not appropriate to release that MOU. I will tell you we have preliminarily identified a number of projects, which obviously totaled $83.7 million. I would be shocked if these things don't change as time goes on. It's just too large and too conceptual. There certainly will be changes as we go down the road. The important point to consider today is, for heaven's sake, where we are and the opportunity that for the first time in the history of any of our lives we have in front of us. If this isn't a positive news story, I don't know what
Oh,
is.
gosh. I got to say, Brad, I got to say one other thing. And I don't mean to give Kenny a hard time, because I love Kenny Bass to death, and he's a great, great friend. He really is. I don't see Kenny here today, so I can talk about him. But Kenny and I were talking in semi-private about the road bond before it ran. And I said, Kenny, don't get on the wrong side of this, Kenny, because this thing is going to pass overwhelmingly. And he looked at me like I was half crazy, and I said, Kenny, it's going to pass overwhelmingly. And I would say to all of y'all that may be doubters that this could become a reality, don't get on the wrong side of it. Because really and truly, it's a coming. It's a coming. Yes, sir.
If I could just follow up, Secretary Thrasher, if you won't give us the MOU, could you give us some details of what sort of commitments, if any, in terms of policy changes or financial incentives or just general efforts by the state to assist that you agreed to
Sure.
during this process?
Wait a minute. I got to do this before you do this.
Okay.
Listen. Do you realize these people could invest $80 billion plus in West Virginia? And you know what they asked for? Nothing. They asked for nothing. Absolutely nothing. You know why they asked for nothing? Because President Trump is on their you-know-what over there and everything, and he's demanding that we get a trade imbalance back in balance. They asked for nothing. Now, would we surely afford them the incentives that we afford others within our state? Absolutely we would. But at the same time, thus far, I can tell you they've asked for nothing.
I would echo the governor's comments. They have not specifically asked for anything. This doesn't have to be in West Virginia. There are other places it could be. We're fortunate to have the level of interest from them that we do. We certainly would afford them the same opportunities we offer to other folks that invest within our economy. So we certainly, would offer the same things up for them. But as the governor said, they have not specifically requested anything over and above what we normally do to attract business into our state.
Was that offered on the front end at all?
No, this thing came about because of relationships. These are relationship-driven with a fundamental underpinning of a good business model that makes sense. And it's very much in the Chinese way. It's very much in human nature. You develop business relationships with people that you come to know and you trust. And our governor's relationship with President Trump, I think, is a major reason why we're here today, and it's not in Ohio or Pennsylvania or other locations. So I think we have the governor to thank for that relationship. When you tie that into the fact it just fundamentally makes good business sense for both parties, it exudes credibility. Rusty?
Y'all keep asking a lot of questions here. My gosh.
This might be a dumb question. Do they want to export the gas too, or do they just want the byproducts?
There were several projects that were announced in China that were export of liquefied natural gas. One was in Texas and one was in Alaska. I certainly think that we have even more gas than Alaska has or Texas has, and it makes sense to me to export those gases that Brian referred to earlier as the fuel source, the methane. So that may be a project down the road. It makes sense to do that, but not specifically identified. But they're all hugely valuable. But I think the most important thing to us, and I know I speak for the governor, is he wants people to work in West Virginia.
And they were not on the list of the 83.7 billion. That was not on that list at all. Makes sense maybe, but you see at the end of the day, that's not value added to us. I mean, that's just extracting our natural resources. What we want is manufacturing jobs.
And that's at the forefront of the list, those facilities that will actually be bricks and mortar, that will take that raw material, put value added, end up with a finished product, most of which is going to be purchased in the developing world.
Brad, we got to get you to.
Secretary Thrasher, aside from financial incentives, as you know, there's a lot of policy initiatives that the natural gas industry in the state would like to see go forth from things like forced pooling. Does this sort of commitment to this kind of investment indicate that we don't need to make those kinds of changes in order to really harness the power of that industry?
That's a good question, and the answer is definitively no. That gas can come from somewhere else. It can come from Pennsylvania. It can come from Ohio. It's important that we have laws and rules and regulations that make West Virginia competitive with the people it is surrounded by and competes with.
And that's really my question, you know, and I mean, the reason I say that is that's a question for the governor, that's a question for the legislature. You know, at the end of the day, we take knowledge and we answer questions and everything. I think you got good knowledge there, but really and truly, at the end of the day, that's a legislature question that they will have to address, and they will waller and they will take the expertise of that, and then I will take the expertise of that, and the governor will make a decision on that.
Were there specific laws, rules, and regulations that were brought up in these discussions?
There were not.
So the other entities that were agreeing to bring this $83.7 billion to West Virginia, they didn't say that they didn't identify any laws, rules, or regulations that they felt we needed to change in order to make this project work.
I think that level of specificity was not identified. I think we recognize, looking in it, that it's important for West Virginia to be competitive, and I hope the legislature takes a look at that. But it comes back to those simple, fundamental precepts. We have the raw material. They have the technology and the demand. There's a relationship that exists that doesn't exist anywhere else. And those are the fundamentals that are really driving this.
But the answer to your question is no. It wasn't even brought up.
Right.
You know, between the players, you know, did the gas companies come to us and say we have to have pooling, or we have to have, you know, co-tenancy, or we have to have joint development or whatever? None of that was ever brought up. Yes, sir, Brad.
I have a very limited and recent understanding of China Energy, but my understanding is they're kind of a hybrid in terms of their makeup. Partially private, partially state-owned. You go way back with them, but I wonder about your impression. Are they good faith actors, good corporate citizens? What can we expect in this kind of partnership?
So beginning a number of years ago, the Shinhua Corporation had a vision of their, at that time, fully state-owned enterprise of being a global leader in the energy space. And so the former CEO, at the time of going partially public, they're now traded on the Hong Kong Exchange, and having a vision of becoming a global enterprise, began a lot of restructuring within the company so that they modeled themselves after companies largely in the US, but also global enterprises, so that they would have the social license to operate around the globe. They modeled themselves after these global companies. ExxonMobil is one of their aspirational peers in terms of their ability to integrate across the value chain, but also in the way they operate. As a coal company, they have some of the world's best safety records. Their technologies for locating miners underground, they can pinpoint the location of any one of their 12,000 miners that are underground at any one given point in time to within 100 feet across the entire country and their mines. Their safety record is absolutely impeccable. It's better than many of the US coal companies, as a matter of fact. I mention this just to show that they are in fact a true leader in both safety and environmental aspects
I was going to say,
across the globe.
I would elaborate on the clean coal technology and the ability that they have to really produce things vastly superior to what other folks are doing in terms of clean, environmentally friendly technology.
That's right. They've been developing, as Secretary Thrasherman, clean coal technologies. They're a partner with WVU on many of these through our U.S.-China Clean Energy Research Center. And so as far as a corporate citizen, I would say that beginning about a decade ago or even longer, they began an effort of transparency that is really a model among partially state-owned enterprises in China. The recent merger with Guodian Power only solidified that standing across the world because they are now the world's largest electricity producer as well as the world's largest coal company. And so they are in fact a tremendous global citizen. They develop a lot of technologies in-house, and one detail is they have a leading research center called the National Institute for Clean and Low Carbon Energy that has a big facility in Beijing and one in Palo Alto, California, that is actively developing new technologies across the entire energy space, as well as new safety techniques. And so, in short, that's one of the reasons why we at WVU have been a global partner with them for now 15 years, actually. It was 2002 when we began this partnership, because we do view them as a good corporate citizen, as a matter of fact.
Woody, you got to promise one thing.
Yes, sir.
Don't tell Brian to elaborate. Yes, sir.
I think, people at home are going to be wondering the numbers of jobs that this could be bringing in to West Virginia, and even maybe surrounding states, Kentucky and Ohio, that people that travel to West Virginia to work. Is there an idea of how many numbers we can see?
It's truly mind-boggling, when you really think about it. It could be tens of thousands of really good-paying jobs. It could be growth like we have never imagined. And so to really identify the exact number of jobs, nobody's done that. We got a ways to go on that, but it could truly be mind-boggling.
Have you spoken directly with the president yet about this?
I've spoken many, many, many times to our president. Oh, goodness, yes, ma'am.
You guys said
No, that's this lady right behind you first.
I just got one follow-up question. You said it's important for West Virginia to be competitive as compared to our surrounding states. Are there any policies that you have in mind that would, in your view, make us more competitive with our surrounding states?
I don't have specifics, but I can tell you that concept goes beyond this discussion that we're talking about today with Shenwa and the petrochemical industry. Across the board, West Virginia has to be competitive, whether it's in tourism, our parks, our tax laws, whatever the nature may be. West Virginia needs to, in those areas where it's deficient relative to its competition, needs to ramp up its game.
One follow-up question, if I can.
Sure.
Sorry, I forgot.
Come on now. Think of it in a minute, okay?
You guys say that there are no shovels in the ground yet, this is just an MOU.
Yep.
Obviously, the conversation will continue. What's the timeline to get an update for things to be more solidified?
Well, let's don't refer to this as, oh, it's just an MOU, you know, because this thing's really got some arms and legs to it and everything. But
It isn't legally binding at this point.
well, it's probably not legally binding, but at the same time, and we want to be realists too. We want to absolutely believe that it's happening, but at the same time, we don't want to just drop all of our guards and think, yeah, it's done. Now,
Business deals begin with MOUs. This is the beginning of a business deal that has a lot of legs to it. So I agree with the governor. I wouldn't in any way, shape, or form minimize the impact of what has been a carefully thought out MOU that both entities have signed. I believe in the very near future, as in this time next year, you will see construction activity taking place. I think this is not something that's some vague point in the distance. It's been specifically laid out in terms of projects and timeframes. They will become clear to everybody as they further develop, but there is a schedule, and I believe you're going to see quick action relative to moving these things forward.
I do too. Remember this, I told you a long time ago, all I can see is 10 months. I told you that a long time ago. I said, Governor, how long is it going to take to do these things and turn things around? And I said, 10 months. That's all I can see. I wasn't wrong about that. Yes, ma'am.
So the sites, I know you had mentioned before that there were 2 tentative sites that you were looking for. I think they were up north. Had we discussed any particular sites?
You know, we've looked at a variety of sites, and that actually fits very nicely with an activity that we're taking place at the Commerce Department, is to really ramp up our certified site program. And so we've basically viewed the number of sites that we identified and knew as potential locations for those facilities. We have not specifically identified what goes where, but certainly we're moving rapidly toward that process. Yes, ma'am.
Going back to talking about the company being big with clean energy, is it possible that we'll be seeing that in the state?
I'm sorry, could you ask that again?
We were talking about clean energy with the company. Is it possible that we'll be seeing more of that in the state?
Well, I think one thing the governor made clear to me, he wants to make sure nothing that happens here will be detrimental to our coal industry. And I said, quite au contraire, the Shenwa Corporation specifically, I think, are more knowledgeable in clean coal technologies than anywhere else in the world. Wouldn't it be wonderful if through their technologies we found other uses for coal that we have not been using to date? And I certainly think that potential exists.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to ask, out in Wood County, there was talk about a methane cracker for a number of years. That talk has kind of died down. Do you think something like this can jumpstart it? And the second part of my question is that will this deal have the potential to reach all corners of the state, or will it be kind of concentrated in certain areas?
You do the
A
first one, I'll do the second.
rising tide is going to lift all ships. Someone else's fortune is not our misfortune. That bulk of that activity is going to be in the Ohio River Basin. That's where the resource is. That's where the sites are. That's where the processes will take place. But when you look at the support industries to those facilities, they're enormous. And I believe it will have significant impact in our state and every corner of it and surrounding states. This is an enormous initiative that will impact the whole Mid-Atlantic region substantially. So we won't be putting specifically locations across the state. I think most of these will be located in the Ohio Valley where that resource exists, but I think certainly that economic activity is going to have a direct benefit to every West Virginian, and I believe surrounding states as well.
And let me throw in something on that too. Think about this just for a second. Think about if in the state of West Virginia we could raise our revenue from 4.6 billion to 5.6 billion. You had basically 1,000 millions of dollars that could go all over our state. Education, our vets, our disabled, everywhere it could go. And next year you're going to have another 1,000 billion. And next year you're going to have another million. You know, really and truly, we don't really care where it's coming from because it can be distributed everywhere. Look at our coal industry for what we've lived on forever. Severance tax off of coal, whether it came from McDowell County or whether it came from wherever county. You know, we lived on it in counties that didn't even have coal. The bottom line is just this, and the other flip side of it is this, is if we can make clean coal technology become a reality, if we can make products at $40 a ton coal that turn coal into actual manufactured products and everything, or manufacturing products, all that just helps. All that lands right all over us. So this could branch, and it will branch through every part of us. Okay, now I'm going to do one thing. Because like I said, this man's been a superstar, and Brian's been good too. Come right here, come here. I just thought of this. This is probably about as dumb as it can be, but just thought of this. Okay? Because y'all, come right here. Come right here. Now you stand on this side, and you stand on this side. I've got to unbutton this. Okay, remember when President Trump did this? And I'm smiling. Okay, guys. Thank all of you so much. You guys are superstars. Thank you. Thank you again. Way to go. All right, thank y'all. God bless. Be good.